Once hailed as the fearless face of ghost hunting, Zak Baggens built an empire on ghost adventures and his infamous haunted museum. But behind the cameras and haunted artifacts, his life has unraveled in ways more chilling than any spirit he ever provoked. From bitter feuds and betrayal in the paranormal world, to health problems that left him scarred, to public scandals and heartbreak that shattered his personal life, Zak's story has turned into a haunting of its own. This is the tragic downfall of a man who spent years chasing ghosts, only to be haunted by his own reality. In the mid-2000s, Zak Baggens emerged as a bold new face in paranormal television, carrying with him an energy that was impossible to ignore. He was young, brash, and determined to turn ghost hunting into a spectacle that blended reality TV drama with genuine curiosity about the unknown. His breakout came with the independent documentary Ghost Adventures, 2004, which captured his overnight lockdowns in haunted places. This project wasn't just another amateur film. It was a gritty, eerie experience that showed Bagans daring the dead to reveal themselves. By 2007, the Sci-Fi Channel aired it nationally, giving viewers their first taste of Bagans' aggressive style. When the Ghost Adventures series premiered on the Travel Channel in 2008, it skyrocketed. Zak's imposing figure, black-clad wardrobe, and confrontational approach to the supernatural made him stand out from the cautious investigators audiences had seen before. Instead of whispering in the dark, he shouted at spirits, challenging them to manifest. His intensity, often accompanied by dramatic night vision footage of scratches, possessions, or sudden fainting, made for irresistible TV. Fans loved his fearlessness and his willingness to act as both leader and lightning rod for ghostly encounters. He became the poster child for the paranormal boom, his popularity eclipsing competitors almost overnight. By the early 2010s, Ghost Adventures was one of the most watched shows on the Travel Channel. Bagans cemented his celebrity status with his best-selling memoir Dark World and a string of specials that further expanded the Ghost Adventures brand. For viewers, Zak Baggens wasn't just investigating haunted houses. He was the haunted house. His personality became inseparable from the show's identity, fueling its rise as a cultural phenomenon. Yet, as the fame grew, so did the seeds of tension, skepticism, and personal costs that would later haunt him. By the mid-2000s teens, Zak Baggens had built an empire that stretched far beyond ghost hunting. Ghost Adventures was racking up season after season, and Baggens became more than just a host. He was the executive producer, narrator, and driving creative force. He branched into spin-offs like Aftershocks and Paranormal Challenge, each of which kept his name at the center of paranormal entertainment. For a time, it seemed like he couldn't miss. Baggens' boldest move came in 2017 with the opening of his haunted museum in Las Vegas. This wasn't just a tourist attraction. It was the ultimate expression of his fascination with cursed and haunted objects. Visitors walked through darkened hallways filled with infamous artifacts: the Dybbuk box, the Devil's rocking chair, Jack Kevorkian's death van, even memorabilia linked to notorious criminals. The museum became a hit, winning awards for best attraction and drawing both fans and skeptics. Celebrities like Post Malone stopped by, with some claiming to suffer strange misfortunes afterward. Bagans reveled in the notoriety, seeing the museum as both a passion project and a permanent legacy. Professionally, Bagans seemed untouchable. He published Ghost Hunting for Dummies in 2019, partnered with filmmaker Eli Roth for the Haunted Museum anthology, and continued his music and writing projects. In Las Vegas, he was treated as both an eccentric showman and a cultural figure who had successfully turned the supernatural into business. At this peak, Zak Baggens wasn't just the face of ghost hunting on TV, he was the industry. But the higher he climbed, the greater the cracks began to show. Colleagues whispered about his ego, skeptics accused him of fakery, and soon controversies began to gnaw at the carefully built empire. The same traits that fueled Zak Baggens' meteoric rise, his intensity, his theatrics, his hunger for control, also began to erode his reputation. Skeptics were some of his earliest and loudest critics, pointing to episodes where evidence seemed staged or exaggerated. Former crew members even alleged that scenes were reshot or manipulated to create drama, with Bagans himself accused of overacting possessions and attacks. While fans accepted some theatrics as part of the show's entertainment, critics argued that Bagans blurred the line between genuine investigation and performance. The credibility that had once set Ghost Adventures apart was now being questioned. But the most damaging blows came from within the paranormal community itself. When co-creator Nick Groff abruptly left Ghost Adventures in 2014, rumors swirled about creative clashes with Bagans. Fans noted that Groff had been sidelined in later seasons, while Bagans increasingly dominated the screen. Years later, Groff hinted at disagreements over the show's direction, particularly its obsession with demonic storylines, and suggested that Bagans' ego had grown too large. By 2023, the feud spilled into the open when Groff claimed he had been blacklisted from networks due to TV politics. Other investigators accused Bagans of pressuring executives to cancel rival shows, painting him as a gatekeeper who used his clout to shut others out. Online, fans who once adored him began to sour, with some saying the show had lost its authenticity and fallen victim to Bagans' arrogance. His haunted museum, too, was under fire. Skeptical researchers debunked the provenance of key artifacts like the Dybbuk box, exposing them as modern hoaxes. Even his books weren't immune. Critics discovered plagiarized passages, forcing Bagans to settle the matter quietly. By this point, the image of Zak Baggens as a fearless ghost hunter was cracking, replaced by whispers of a man more interested in control, profit, and theatrics than truth. For all his bravado on screen, Zak Baggens has admitted that chasing ghosts has left lasting scars on his body and mind. Perhaps the most infamous example came from his 2018 documentary Demon House, where he investigated what was dubbed the most haunted house in America, in Gary, Indiana. After weeks of filming violent possessions, terrifying encounters, and what he described as dark forces, Bagans had the house demolished. But the demons, he said, didn't leave with it. Not long after, Bagans developed diplopia, permanent double vision, that forced him to wear prism glasses for the rest of his life. For a man who built his brand on his piercing stare, the condition was a cruel twist, one he himself blamed on the house. And that wasn't the only toll. During a Halloween special in 2019 at the Parent Farmhouse, the inspiration for The Conjuring, Bagans fell violently ill. He later described panic attacks, dizziness, and weeks of feeling as if something was drawing the life out of me. Over the years, he has often told stories of fainting, sudden illnesses, or mood swings after certain investigations. While skeptics dismiss these as theatrics, Bagans insists the dark energies he confronts have real consequences. He's described paranormal work as a kind of Russian roulette. Every location potentially dangerous. Every investigation another risk of inviting something into his body or mind. The tragedy here is layered. On the surface, Bagans' ailments lend authenticity to his claims. He has paid a personal price in pursuit of evidence. But, on a deeper level, they represent a haunting that never ends. Unlike an episode that can be neatly edited for television, his health issues are permanent, invisible demons. Bagans once seemed untouchable, the fearless leader who provoked spirits without fear. Today, fans see a man who carries those spirits inside him, in scars he can't shake off. If Zak Baggens' health struggles revealed the toll of ghost hunting, the tragedies among his closest colleagues showed that the real dangers sometimes come from people, not spirits. One of the earliest and darkest moments came in 2015, when frequent Ghost Adventures guests Mark and Debbie Constantino were found dead in a shocking murder-suicide. Mark killed Debbie after years of reported abuse, then turned the gun on himself. For Bagans and his crew, who had filmed with the Constantinos many times, the event was devastating. It added a chilling shadow over the Ghost Adventures family, one that fans often describe as the first sign of a curse following those tied to the show. But the heartbreak didn't end there. In early 2025, Bagans' closest teammate, Aaron Goodwin, faced an ordeal that seemed ripped from a horror movie. Aaron's wife, Victoria, was arrested in Las Vegas for plotting to hire a hitman. Her target, horrifyingly, was Aaron himself. The murder-for-hire scheme collapsed when the supposed assassin turned out to be an undercover officer, but the revelation left Aaron shaken and betrayed. He called it the most emotionally trying time of my life. The story rocked the fan base. After decades of watching Aaron and Zak side by side in haunted basements and asylums, viewers were stunned to see Aaron's real-life horror eclipse anything on the show. For Bagans, watching his longtime friend endure this ordeal added another tragic chapter. The crew paused filming, and though Aaron survived, the betrayal left scars no exorcism could cure. Bagans himself did not speak much about it publicly, but the silence said plenty. After years of facing the dead, the living had proven to be more dangerous, and the idea that even the Ghost Adventures family could fracture under such darkness left fans wondering how much more tragedy Bagans could shoulder. While health scares and crew tragedies painted one side of Zak Baggens' decline, the collapse of his personal reputation came from another: scandal. For years, Bagans kept his private life relatively low profile, but his 6-year relationship with model and former Girls Next Door star Holly Madison brought him into a brighter spotlight. At first, the pairing seemed stable. Two reality TV veterans, both Las Vegas personalities, finding common ground. But in 2021, cracks appeared as reports of on-and-off breakups surfaced. By early 2025, the couple called it quits for good. Then came the explosion. Madison took to her podcast and social media, unleashing a storm of accusations that Zak Baggens had cheated on her with at least 7 different women. She posted cryptic messages and receipts, updating the tally as more stories poured in. Fans watched in disbelief as Madison publicly dismantled their relationship, branding Bagans a serial cheater who had humiliated her for years. The drama dominated tabloids, and for Bagans, who built his brand on being serious, stoic, and commanding, the image of a man caught in messy infidelity was a devastating blow. This scandal arrived at a time when Bagans was already under fire for alleged plagiarism in his books, for feuds with former co-star Nick Groff, and for accusations that he used his clout to cancel rival shows. Together, it painted a picture of a man whose empire was cracking from every angle, accused of being dishonest in work, accused of betrayal in love, and accused of arrogance in business. By 2025, his once devoted fan base was divided. Some still stood by him, pointing to decades of entertainment and achievement, but others saw a tragic figure, a ghost hunter who had become haunted by his own decision. By the mid-2020s, Zak Baggens was no longer the fresh face of paranormal TV. He had become its most polarizing figure. In the early years, fans saw him as fearless, willing to scream into the dark and confront anything that moved. But over time, even loyal viewers began to question whether the theatrics had gone too far. On forums and social media, longtime supporters lamented that Ghost Adventures had turned into a cycle of recycled plots. Every spirit was a demon, every bump in the dark exaggerated. What once felt raw and groundbreaking now looked scripted and formulaic. But the deeper fractures came within the paranormal community itself. Bagans falling out with Nick Groff became a defining saga. Groff's later accusations of being blacklisted from networks by TV politics gave voice to what many suspected, that Zak was pulling strings behind the scenes to protect his empire. Other investigators like Bill Hartley added fuel by accusing him of gangster tactics, telling executives to choose between him or other shows. Whether true or not, the perception stuck. Bagans became seen not just as a star, but as a gatekeeper. For some, he was no longer the bold ghost hunter who opened doors, but the one who slammed them shut. This perception poisoned the community. Up-and-coming investigators on YouTube or small cable shows often avoided mentioning him, wary of the shadow he cast. Others openly mocked his style, positioning themselves as the anti-Bagans, more serious, less sensational. By 2025, Bagans' reputation had fractured. Beloved by die-hard fans, reviled by skeptics, and treated with suspicion by many peers. It was a tragic shift for a man who once symbolized unity in the paranormal world, now standing as a controversial figure surrounded by whispers of ego and control. As his controversies multiplied, another element crept into Zak Baggens' life, an unmistakable sense of isolation. Fame had elevated him to the top of paranormal entertainment, but it had also walled him off. His haunted museum, though thriving, became almost a fortress, where fans lined up outside, but few truly knew the man behind the glass cases. Reports from former staff painted him as a difficult boss, obsessed with rules and his own image. While unverified, such stories only fed the image of Bagans as a recluse, surrounded by artifacts rather than people. His personal relationships reinforced this impression. The collapse of his romance with Holly Madison wasn't just tabloid fodder. It symbolized how, even in love, Bagans' life seemed haunted. Madison's accusations of betrayal left him silent, unwilling to defend himself publicly. That silence itself became a statement, one that made him appear cornered. A man who once commanded spirits, now unable to command his own narrative. Add to this the tragedies of his colleagues, the Constantino murder-suicide, Aaron Goodwin's betrayal by his wife, and Bagans appeared increasingly cursed by proximity to chaos. Behind the fame, the wealth, and the museum tours, what emerged was a portrait of loneliness. Bagans had built his world around ghosts, and now, fittingly, he lived like one. Admired from a distance, whispered about in scandal, rarely connected on a human level. In interviews, his once fiery energy had mellowed into something quieter, even defensive. The fearless investigator now sounded weary, as if decades of chasing shadows had left him with too many of his own. Looking at Zak Baggens in 2025, the picture is complicated and undeniably tragic. He still commands a loyal audience. Ghost Adventures has reached an astonishing 28 seasons, and his haunted museum remains one of Las Vegas's strangest attractions. Yet his influence no longer feels triumphant. It feels haunted, marked by controversy, loss, and decline. Once celebrated as a pioneer, he now exists in a fractured legacy, adored by some, dismissed by others, and questioned by many. For critics, his downfall is simple. Ego and sensationalism caught up with him. They point to accusations of fakery, feuds with colleagues, and scandals in his personal life as proof that Bagans became a character of his own creation, more showman than seeker of truth. For fans, the tragedy lies in watching a man who gave everything to the paranormal world now suffer under the weight of health problems, heartbreak, and betrayal. Either way, his story is no longer just about ghosts. It's about what happens when chasing the supernatural consumes the natural life you have. Zak Baggens once told an interviewer, "You can't look into the dark without it looking back at you." Today, those words feel like prophecy. He stared into the darkness for decades, daring it to reveal itself. And now, at his current age, the darkness stares back, not as a spirit in the shadows, but as the tragedies, scandals, and losses that haunt his every step. His legacy is not just one of ghost hunting, but of a man who became haunted himself.